We're going to a lot of content to get through this afternoon. We've got more panel sessions, more presentations. We're going to hear from a bit more youth, which is hopefully going to put you guys on the spot because, I think we heard some interesting discussion earlier about the issues specifically facing young people and transport, and we want to get a little bit more into that. We will do. And then we're going to hear a little bit about transport and aspirations by 2050 as well. But first of all, we heard certainly Kathy mentioned the point of how important business is in all this. So let's kick off this afternoon session with Tom Thackray. Tom is Director of Infrastructure from the CBI, which is the Confederation of British Industries. So Tom, business perspectives, what's it all about? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you here this afternoon. My name's Tom Thackray. I'm the Director for Infrastructure and Energy at the CBI. If you haven't heard of the CBI, that stands for Confederation of British Industry. We speak for some 190,000 businesses that together employ about a third of the private sector workforce. And obviously all of those businesses use and benefit from transport infrastructure. And it's the CBI's role to ensure that the needs of those businesses are heard in the planning, procurement and delivery of new transport projects. So it's a pleasure to be with you here today to discuss some of our perspectives from the business point of view about what business requires in its transport system up to 2050, with a particular eye on the southeast. And for us, obviously, effective transport networks can be the difference between growth and stagnation for British businesses in the years up to 2050. For future growth, UK companies need access to a highly skilled and highly mobile workforce, and quick access to global and national markets. So without coordinated investment in transport connection from both public and private sectors, businesses will lose out to foreign competition. Over the last 10 years or so, it's a familiar story that our productivity has flatlined. It grew by just 3% between 2006 and 2016. And our nation's productivity is below all of the other countries in the G7. And this, from our understanding, is in part due to a lack of strategic investment in transport infrastructure and poor connectivity between regional business centres. Transport lies at the heart of British businesses' challenge to reverse this trend. We wrote a report called Unlocking Regional Growth a year or so ago, which showed that by boosting productivity, in part through better infrastructure, there is the potential to add some £175 billion to England's economy over the next decade. And transport infrastructure also represents the lifeline between British businesses and their export partners across the world. Small changes like the addition of just one single daily air connection between the UK and an emerging market can boost UK trade by up to £128 million a year. 8 new routes, and that rises up to £1 billion every single year. And because of these issues, commitment to transport planning, expenditure and project delivery is a crucial stalwart for global market confidence in the future of British business. And transport infrastructure in the southeast is a keystone for future national economic growth. In its own right, southeast is a powerful motor of the national economy. It adds over £200 billion per year in UK output. That's more than Scotland and Wales put together. There are 350,000 commuters that travel into London from the southeast for work every day. Creatively planned infrastructure in the region is therefore essential to further business growth in the capital. There are, however, parts of the southeast with significantly lower productivity that have markedly worse access to London and the rest of the region. Areas such as Hastings on the south coast, Maidstone and routes out to northeast Kent have much to gain from improved infrastructure networks. The region is also a crucial gateway to the wider world. The southeast is home to Europe's busiest roll-on, roll-off ferry port at Dover, Port of Southampton, GetLink, and a strategic network of shipping hubs that connect our economy to the continent. Crucially, the region is also home to the UK's second busiest international airport in terms of passenger traffic at Gatwick Airport and has Heathrow Airport on its periphery. The aviation sector contributes £52 billion to the UK economy and supports around 1 million jobs, a large proportion of those in the southeast. The construction of a third runway on the northwest of the current Heathrow site has the potential to see growth in excess of 35% of traffic at the airport in the long term, matched by potential future expansion at Gatwick and in other international transport hubs in the region. This change will present a significant opportunity, but also challenges for the wider transport network. And because of these expanding international links, the success of transport for the South East is not simply a concern for the local economy, but businesses nationwide depend on the region's success for access to global markets. We need to get investment in infrastructure projects like the Lower Thames Crossing and plans to expand the Port of Southampton right to ensure the free flow of people, goods and investment from this gateway region to the rest of the country. TFSE's success will be important to economic growth far beyond its area of direct control. But the UK's transport infrastructure will need to be radically transformed to meet the requirements of businesses in 2050. Britain's infrastructure network needs to be ready for a digital revolution. Over the next 30 years, there will be increased demand from businesses nationwide for a service-based, interoperable transport system that meets the requirements of rapid technological developments in mobility. In the last few years alone, trials of autonomous vehicles, blockchain in shipping, intelligent railway networks have already posed some new questions about how we plan to build our transport infrastructure in the future. Many of our basic assumptions about how roads, ports, airports and rail networks have worked and how they've worked over the past 50 years will be turned on their heads by new models of vehicle ownership, new journey plans, and how we recharge the vehicles that we use. While at present there's no obvious answers for exactly how the future transport infrastructure will be different, businesses across our membership are pushing for changes in our approaches to planning that are best suited to the technological shift and keeping our options open. TFSC's stated aim to move from designing transport infrastructure based around vehicles to considering how we can build networks around places understands this trend. To plan for how new technologies will change transport use, business needs local leaders to take a more holistic approach of how new and existing infrastructure will serve their requirements. As with the oyster payments model pioneered by TfL in London, different regions could benefit from mapping fare structures around how users move between places, not the institutions that run separate modes. Improved interoperability will put users' needs at the heart of efforts to build more efficient transport services ready for technical change. And this kind of thinking is already influencing national policy debate. Discussions that are taking place around the Williams Review of the future of our railways have raised how we can build a more flexible timetabling structure that may facilitate more efficient interchanges of passengers as they pass between different modes. The CBI is working on a series of reports looking at the future of the commute as well. A recent survey we ran of the public found that workers in the South East lose approximately 1.5 hours a week to travel disruption and delays on their commute. Improved data sharing between businesses and government could help providers tackle this by improving their understanding of users' requirements. The future of technologies like autonomous vehicles is indeed very exciting, but businesses are beginning to recognise they will only be fully realised if we can ensure that all parts of the country are able to participate. Even in the South East, one of the most densely populated areas of the country, parts of the region run the risk of being left behind by technology change if we don't have the right digital infrastructure in place to support it. To make the most of the technological changes that will come before 2050, British businesses need to see new approaches to leadership on infrastructure in planning at both a regional and national level. And transport infrastructure providers also need to step up to the net zero challenge. The government's commitment to achieve a net zero greenhouse gas emissions target by 2050 will present significantly altered demands on the country's transport infrastructure. We see the challenge for groups like TFSE as being helping business to meet these demands while at the same time delivering strong economic growth. The transport sector is the UK's largest source of emissions, so everyone within business needs to step up. At present, around 3% of new vehicles sold on our roads are zero emissions. We need to get that up to near 100% by 2040, if not before. Businesses buy approximately 50% of new vehicles that are registered in the UK. So as consumers, businesses are potentially a massive agent for change in the industry. To ensure a transition to a carbon-neutral transport sector, however, British businesses will need reassurance that their investments in clean technologies will deliver reliable, cost-efficient services that can meet their requirements. The growth in the sale of EVs, for instance, is a fantastic opportunity to drive down emissions. However, without coordinated investment in the power network to supply whole cities' worth of vehicles, businesses will not be confident in replacing their fleets in this way. Similarly, with clean gas and hydrogen models for HGVs, businesses still need to be convinced they will have access to the refueling networks that they need. Similarly, the expected rise in low emissions rail use that is expected by 2050 will require an equally wide scale of set of commitments to increase capacity on networks connecting urban centres. In the southeast, as in the national picture, businesses have comparatively quick access to London on low emissions rail lines. Rail travel between non-hub towns remains cost and time inefficient, however. The aviation sector will be the acid test for the changes needed in the transport sector by 2050. Businesses will need access to global markets that expanded services from Heathrow's third runway and potential use of the northern runway at Gatwick can provide. So we need to reconcile that growing demand with the need for lower emissions. When it comes to both the digitisation of transport infrastructure and the decarbonisation of the sector, getting aviation right in the southeast will have a profound impact on the rest of the economy. However, the industry also needs strong leadership from government working with the private sector to secure R&D investment, which is needed to reduce the overall carbon footprint of the sector. Government needs to build on its aerospace sector deal and its future of flights challenge to incentivise private sector solutions to the problem. Britain has played a leading role internationally, bringing together the recognised Carbon Offsetting and Reduction Scheme for International Aviation, CORSIA. It's an important voice at the International Civil Aviation Organisation and must use this to ensure global cooperation on carbon footprint reduction in the industry without putting British businesses at a competitive disadvantage. In regions like the southeast, the hope is that leadership in transport sectors like the aviation industry can live up to one of the CBI membership's core aspirations. That's strong economic growth with a net benefit for the environment. To wrap up, it's worth remembering that progress has been made, and TFSE itself has come a long way since it was launched in 2017. The CBI supports its application to become a statutory subnational transport body, a move we believe will be crucial to securing the region-sensitive decision-making that will be key to delivering future growth. The South East now has a much-needed voice in national discussions about how transport planning should be set out. Crucially for businesses nationwide, TFSE also recognises the region's strategic value to the rest of the country as a gateway to global markets. Money spent wisely in the South East will have an even greater impact across the UK by 2050. However, the CBI also recognises that its progress comes alongside a series of challenges. Large-scale infrastructure expansion will depend on market confidence and business investment in the UK. That's a factor that has been in decline in 5 out of the last 6 quarters due to the uncertainty over Brexit. Without an orderly resolution to Brexit that avoids a no-deal scenario, it may be impossible to make the changes I've described. Similarly, to deliver these projects, we need better imagination about how we can finance them. The UK has led the world at this, harnessing access to the City of London, secure, private, competitive finance for growth. Now government needs to work with the private sector once again to re-establish these credentials. Most of all, government and industry need to get a grip on the delivery of projects. Whether in the southeast or nationwide, businesses will urgently need radically changed transport infrastructure in place long before 2050. Taking a fair share of the risk associated with large infrastructure projects, government bodies need to get on with building transport networks so that business can move forward with benefiting from them. This country needs a truly modern infrastructure network to meet the needs of a modern economy. Bodies like TFSE, in partnership with business, can make this happen. Thanks for your time today. I look forward to the rest of the conference. Cheers.
Thanks, Tom. Have you got time for a couple of questions? I know you've got to rush off, but we heard this morning there's a couple of comments that kind of underline the fact that quite a lot of what business does is seen as, I suppose, the not necessarily helpful in terms of meeting our sustainable goals, meeting our climate change targets when it comes to transport. What is CBI doing to try to make sure that, as Kathy pointed out, business is really part of the solution rather than the problem?
So I think that the first thing is about establishing the ambition, so recognising that businesses support the net zero target. I don't think we should sniff at that, and I think most businesses that I speak to recognise that it's something that we have to do. We're already seeing the impact of extreme weather events, through flooding, through overheating, whether or not we heat or cool this building has an impact on it. So it's getting there in the conversations we're having with business across the piece. And now it's about having the supportive policy environment in place. So when it comes to the EV rollout, for example, the businesses I speak to are mostly concerned about range anxiety. Can they charge up their electric vehicle in time? And are there the range of models that they need? So I think there's growing number of consumer models out there, but businesses' needs in terms of logistics can be quite different, and the technology, for example, for HGVs is much less secure. So there needs to be some substantial R&D investment as well to start solving some of those technology problems. And we need to be realistic as well. There's 2050. There's talk about 2030 and 2025 now, but 2050 is going to be really hard work to get there when the technology is so uncertain.
I mean, do you have a vision for what British industry will look like then? Because we heard also today about the likely growth in home working, the reduction in people needing to travel to work at a certain point. I mean, what is your vision for British industry in 2050?
Yeah, I think we'd want to see more flexibility. We know that works for employees and it works for employers. We've done some surveying of businesses and their employees, and there is a mismatch between the proportion of firms that could offer flexible working for their staff versus those who are. And pretty much universally, most employees would value more flexibility in the way that they work. So there's more that can be done on that front, I think. Has to be said that sometimes our transport systems don't encourage that, though. The way that our ticketing regime works on rail, for example, I know it's something that's been looked at through the Williams Review, but it doesn't support those part-time working, flexible working in the way that that's offered. So if we can provide more flexibility through our transport systems, you can support business in making that change.
Because I suppose that right now, I mean, is it time that business actually took, got on the front foot to start to help make that change, to actually put in place or to work with bodies like TFAC to put in place the strategies that actually help that to become the reality?
Yeah, I think business has got to be on the front foot. I think there are some reputational challenge about businesses' involvement in infrastructure. And I think unless they kind of step into it with the solutions and looking forward, recognising the technology shifts and the change in consumer behaviour we're going to see in the next few years, businesses have to be on the front foot, showing how they're facing into those problems, and not, and also being sort of cognizant of the fact that it's going to cost money, and the burden of that cost can be felt sort of equally across the economy, or we can pay a little bit more attention so that those costs don't fall on those least able to bear them. Which in the past, in some of the transitions that we've made, hasn't always been the case.
And are you having enough conversations with TFSE over their transport strategy? Are you embedded in the team there?
I think we're doing our best. I think it's across the country. So we have a national remit. We try and engage with the strategic transport bodies as best as we can. But I think we can always do more.
Tom, thank you very much indeed. I know you've got to rush off somewhere. Presumably you're going to get a train or somewhere. I don't know where you're heading, but anyway, safe journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Tom.
much. Cheers.